Bayless Healthcare is a full-service, integrated healthcare facility. We are dedicated to providing ongoing development for all clinicians that we recruit from various universities in the Phoenix metropolitan area. We have master's level interns as well as postdoctoral students who come to us for training and education. We believe that didactic training through our educational program is essential in making sure that our clinical skills stay as sharp as possible. According to the American Pediatric Manual on Adolescent and Children, there are over 1 million children and preteens with bipolar disorder, as well as over 3.4 million children are diagnosed with depression. We're very pleased today to have Dr. Sheila Babandir, who will discuss with us the problems and difficulties associated with bipolar disorder in children and adolescents. I hope you enjoy our didactic session on bipolar disorder and depression with adolescents and children. Thank you.
PANDA, positive alternatives to negative and destructive actions. Let me explain. A few years ago, I was doing my doctorate dissertation. This is part of my doctorate research. The title of the doctorate research was The Effectiveness of a Psychosocial Treatment Program for Pediatric Bipolar Disorder on Self-Esteem and Problematic Behaviors. That just seemed really long. So I shortened it up and I made an acronym called PANDA to kind of summarize. And for when I wanted to actually have a group of children, I didn't want to say, you are in a psychosocial rehab education program on problematic behavior, but they were in the PANDA program. So the idea behind this program was to look at children that had pediatric bipolar disorder or any kind of severe mood disorder. There's a lot of controversy still about the diagnosis of pediatric bipolar disorder. We're not going to discuss that today. We're going to look at treatment. Treatment of symptoms of severe mood disorders, sometimes called pediatric bipolar disorder. I started this back in 2004 when I started the research. Originally, I thought bipolar disorder. I want to understand bipolar disorder. At the same time, I started working in a school district, and I was a school counselor. I had an LPC, and I was working with the kids who were in emotionally disabled classrooms, the self-contained. There were 3 of these classrooms in the district in my school. They kept me busy full-time. Age range 2nd grade to 5th grade, 5th grade to 8th grade, and then they had another 5th grade to 8th grade. So this was a large group of children. At the same time, my son at 6, back in the year 2000, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a 6-year-old. I believe that it was accurate, given everything that I had read. I believed he really did have bipolar disorder, and to this day, I know that to be a fact. He has been the reason that I've been able to get into so many different places and get research. I've been to the National Institute of Mental Health. I've been to Massachusetts General Hospital. I've been to the University of Chicago Juvenile Research Institute. How? Because I get him as part of studies and I have to go along. Then I introduce myself to the researching, tell them I'm writing a dissertation and I'm researching, and they all sit and talk to me. Some even invited me to spend some days with them. It was wonderful. He's a great doorway into understanding. But also, I want to understand, what can I do differently? I'm looking at the children in the school district. In these self-contained classrooms, their lives are falling apart, their parents' lives are falling apart, their family lives are falling apart, their school experience is horrible, their teachers are ready to pull their hair out. I'm going home and I'm feeling a little bit of the same. They have 5 children. He's one of 5. His big sisters are like, really? And that kind of an attitude. And every time I went to find treatment, I got, what medication do you have him on? Well, I had him on medication. That wasn't the issue. The issue was he has no skills. And it didn't seem like he could, he couldn't get the skills the way I was trying to teach them. But neither could the kids at the school district, and neither could the kids in the community mental health. So something else had to be out there. I'd ask about, do you have treatment? Well, we can give you counseling. Counseling is fine, except it doesn't help the child who's in the counseling office to use those skills out in the playground at school. That's where they're getting in trouble. So they get along great with you. They love coming to talk with you, as a matter of fact, and playing games in your office. Wonderful. However, how does that translate out here? And that's where the problems were coming in. So I decided it was time to start looking at what is out there research-wise. What are we doing for kids with this kind of mood disorders? What is out there psychosocially? I understand that the diagnostics is still up in the air. I understand that they're looking at medications, and even that's up in the air. But is anybody looking at what can we do for these kids psychosocially to help them? And I found one researcher by the name of Dr. Manny Pavluri at University of Chicago, who had some of the same ideas. So based on a lot of her research, some time with her, and my own research, this is what I put together. First of all, to define the problem, why are we worried about the kids that have bipolar disorder? There can't be that many, right? Well, this research is these numbers are from 2004. There was a million children and adolescents that already were afflicted with some kind of serious mood disorder. There was 3.4 million that had some form of depression, and a third of those would go on most likely to have some kind of severe mood disorder, pediatric bipolar disorder, or some variation thereof. So is there a problem with that? We have a bunch of kids with the diagnosis, put them on medication, they'll be fine, right? Wrong. One of the most major concerns is that these kids take their lives. 10 to 20% with serious mood disorders are going to complete suicide. 33% or more are going to attempt it at least once before the age of 18. I'm a parent of a child who has tried 3 times in his mood disorder. It's not fun to be in the emergency room. It's not fun to sit in the inpatient setting and wonder, is he going to be okay? Even if the attempts are minimal, even if they're just kind of a nod in that direction, 13, 14, 15, 10-year-olds should not live their life nodding or attempting towards taking their own lives. Parents, siblings, teachers, friends, that's not what life is about. Life is supposed to be quality. Life is supposed to be lived. It's supposed to be fun. So this is concerning. This is concerning when we have these kinds of numbers. What is it about the mood that makes them suicidal? The mood of depression is one thing. Depression, low energy, right? We don't see it as much just with depression. We see low energy with depression. There's a mood that's kind of more of the suicidal mood. And that's one of these more mixed mood episodes. That means it has energy in it. Energy, there's some agitation, there's impulsivity. Do we know any teenagers that aren't impulsive? Not many, right? Now let's add in there the energy, the agitation, the irritableness, the manicness, I'll say it, manicness, okay? Hypomanicness. So we have this range of emotions, different than a pure bipolar cycle. I'm depressed, I'm manic, I'm depressed, I'm manic. These kids tend to do, I'm depressed and manic, I'm depressed and manic, I'm depressed and manic, and they kind of just keep cycling. You'll see it within the day. You'll see them all mixed together. I'm crying, and I'm low energy, and yet I have too much energy, and I'm agitated, all at the same time. And that impulsivity rises, and what happens is you have an agitated depression and irritableness, you have impulsivity, you have the makings for a statistic. So El Gorda said in 2011 that there's this quality of life. Quality of life is so low. And the quality of life of both the child as well as the family influences a lot of the suicidality, especially in pediatric bipolar disorder. So the youth have a very poor quality of life as defined by their low self-esteem. It's defined by how many social problems they have. Social problems and school problems oftentimes come together like this. If I'm not doing well socially, what fun is school? I'm sitting around with 14 other people around me and none of them like me. And I'm not doing that hot with my work either. And actually the teachers don't really think a whole lot of me either. So they all kind of go together. This is the major place children spend their time during the day. And then they go home. Well, if at home I have a low quality of life there too, because of me, there's a lot of family dynamic issues. There's also a lot of splitting in the family. Not just the clinical term of splitting where I side with mom or I side with dad. I'm talking about physical splitting in the family. I'm talking about mom and dad separating because there's so much arguing going on and they can't pull it together. I'm talking about siblings or the child themselves having to go live with another relative because we can't have them in the house. It's just too disruptive. That's the kind of splitting I'm talking about, and that happens more frequently than not in these families. The tension gets to be too much. Children that have these severe mood disorders tend to also have an underlying depression that they're always persistently trying to manage. So they've got these highs and they've got this energy up here, but underlying it all is a very persistent negativity, a persistent depressive attitude, and a persistent aggressive behavior. Even if they're not necessarily exposed to it, there's still that aggression that's kind of underlying all of it. There's also a lot of sleep difficulties. Sleep difficulties because of mood. Dmitry Papalos, in his book, The Bipolar Child, talks about the whole biological clock. And that for these kids, it's like the clock is not set. It's not set the way it needs to be. And it's not one of these that you can alter simply by, okay, let me get on the schedule and just keep to it and it's always going to work. It doesn't quite work that way. Here's another thing that I found, and I did not find this through research in the literature. I found this through talking to adults with bipolar disorder, children with bipolar disorders and families, through different agencies and groups that I was part of. There is something that the population calls the bipolar dream. Have any of you heard of the bipolar dream? Okay, the bipolar dream, this is scary. And this would cause me to have sleep difficulties. When you dream, considering you're all neurotypical people, right? When you dream, if you're starting to have a nightmare, what happens is the monster is after you, and you're running, and you're running, and you're just about to be attacked by the monster, and you wake up. You're sweating, you're feeling the anxiety, you're feeling the rush, but you're awake. And in reality, nothing happened. And so you're in a panic state. You might not want to go back to sleep, but you're okay. The bipolar dream is the monster's after you. The monster gets you. You don't wake up. The monster attacks you. The monster rips you apart. They dream very vividly, very graphically, very gory dreams, and they don't wake up to end this nightmare. They see it. They feel it, and they're experiencing it in their sleep. That's terrifying. I wouldn't go back to sleep. I don't want to go back to sleep when I wake up because I didn't get attacked. Can't imagine going back to sleep if I've dreamt that I have been attacked. This was a theme that came up over and over and over again, adults and children alike, talking about these kinds of dreams. And like I said, within their own community, they term it the bipolar dreams. The other thing that Manny Pavoluri talked about was the neurocognitive or executive functions. She did her study and she followed up in 2009 and again came up with the same information, that there's definitely some kind of cognitive deficits and neurocognitive slowness that happens with kids that have pediatric bipolar disorder. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not bright. These kids can be very, very bright. It means that they can't necessarily access that information the way we would like them to. They can't necessarily use it their working memory is slower. It's not processing the information. They've got a pool of information. They've got a pool of facts a lot of times that they could really be excellent trivia partners. Trivial Pursuit, they probably have all the random facts you could want. However, how do they access it? How do they use it? How do they use it to problem solve in daily life? That's where the problems come in, and they don't have that ability. When you consider the whole child, and I want you to consider the whole child for a moment, not just the behaviors, the whole child, let's take a look at what life looks like. I get up in the morning, I've just had terrible, gory dreams. I'm tired. I can't seem to find any social skills to speak nicely to any member of my family, and now I'm going to go to a place called school where nobody likes me, and I'm having problems making sense of the material, and besides that, I'm going to fall asleep because I'm bored. The teachers already say I'm a problem. So what do we end up with? We end up with a whole set of problems. Behavior, school failure, fighting, disruptive behavior, low frustration tolerance. These are the kids that can't stand when things don't go right. Again, let's think about how all of this connects. It's not one thing, right? It's a connection of many, many things. How this all connects, they have low frustration tolerance. They can't deal with you saying, no, that problem's wrong. You need to do it this way. That can cause them to clear their whole desk and table, right? And throw a fit. And that's not good public relations skills for the kids. When you're throwing a fit and clearing your desk because you've been told your problem is wrong, that doesn't make friends and influence people well. They have that explosive anger. They get teased by their peers, especially peers who are not in special education, who really don't understand all of this. They don't normally have friends because they have really poor social skills. Their siblings don't necessarily get along with them. How do you think you would feel as a sibling if every time your family tried to go out, even simply to dinner, it was your brother or sister that caused an uproar, a disruption? How do you think you would feel? You'd be going, Candy, stay home? We're missing another movie. We can't go out to dinner. No more family vacation. Mom and dad are upset again. You would feel that. Do you think that the affected child feels that? Yeah, they feel that. And then, of course, there's tension between the parents because, it's you not being consistent enough. That's why Johnny acts this way. Well, you're too harsh on him. That's why he acts this way. Well, you're never home. That's why he acts this way. And so we get that tension. The reason he acts this way is because he's got a disorder. So all of this, when you put it together, the whole piece, here's your key word, hopelessness. I don't have any hope. I'm helpless. I'm worthless. I feel horrible. And when I feel horrible, I'm going to act out on that. So there's your picture. There's why we need to be able to treat these children. Because there's too many of them out there with this complex group of symptoms, with these family dynamics that end up becoming part of the symptoms. And I don't know if cart before the horse, horse before the cart. Doesn't really matter. They intertwine. And these kids need treatment. So there's 3 areas where I want to focus treatment. But it's important that you look at how I have them numbered. The typical clinician, the clinical application would be, let's go right here. They're kids. They need to learn socially acceptable behaviors. That's key, right? They're not getting along at home and at school. They're not getting along with peers. So let's go in and teach them how to be socially acceptable. And how well are they acceptable? How accepting are they of that kind of intervention? I see a smile from the clinician. Pretty, right? Why? Why don't they want to accept that? Why don't they want you to come in, You've got a master's degree. What more? Why don't they want you to come in and tell them how to act socially acceptable?
They don't see that it's possible.
They don't see it's possible. They don't see that it's going to do any good. They failed before. They don't think you know what you're talking about because you're not them. They don't understand. They believe that someplace in their head, they're a bad child because that's what they've heard. Whether they've heard it with those exact words or similar words, that's what they've heard. And so they don't think it's possible. The number one thing that we have to do first is we have to teach them self-acceptance. I am okay. I can accept myself with all of my foibles, with all of my problems, with all of the behavioral outbursts that I have. I can accept myself. Number two is that I can learn techniques. I can learn techniques to lessen some of the problems. I can do it. And then thirdly, you can come in and you can teach them all those socially acceptable behaviors. Because then they're much more ready to listen. The front line of treatment, you'll always hear for a mood disorder. The front line of treatment, you'll always hear for a mood disorder of this magnitude is going to be medication, pharmacotherapy. And we're not here to discuss whether it works or doesn't work. We're not here to discuss which ones work the best. Yes, they do help to stabilize the mood. And if you have a child out of control, nothing that I'm telling you today is going to help when that child is totally out of control. You definitely need to have some sense of stability so that they can even grasp anything that you're about to tell them or work with them on or work with their family on. Because when a child is clearing a table, tipping over a chair, harming themselves, breaking a window, putting a hole in the wall, hiding under a desk, they really are not in the best place to learn new behaviors. They're not listening. The one thing is in educating parents that you do want to know and you want to understand a little bit about the medications and what sometimes can have a side effect or not a side effect. One thing we do know with bipolar disorder, especially pediatric bipolar disorder, is there's a huge overlap between the symptoms of pediatric bipolar disorder and ADHD. And the ADHD kind of surfaces to the top. And our front line for ADHD kids tends to be a stimulant. And a stimulant for a child with a mood disorder goes and ramps them right up into manic. Okay, and you get the energy that can be pretty scary. So those are things to at least know about and to be able to educate parents on so the parents can talk to the nurse practitioner or the psychiatrist. So the purpose of a psychosocial program. Goals. What are the goals? You should always have goals. Here comes the teacher part of me. Have to have goals in your treatment plan, everybody, right? So here's your goals are going to be that you want the child to be able to recognize some of the causes of their thoughts, of their feelings, and of their actions. Just to recognize what's causing that. The cause is not the belief, I'm a bad child. I want them now to adopt a new belief. I'm a good child. I have some difficult symptoms. Got some really difficult things I have to deal with. And I want them to gain a sense of control. Then, when you come in to teach me some new skills, if I feel a sense of control, then I can invite you into my world and I can work with you as a partner. And that's true for everybody in this room. Once that child believes a few basic things, like I'm a good kid with bad symptoms, I don't feel in control, but you're going to help me to feel in control, and there's things I can learn, and if I can understand what's going on with me, you're going to have that child in a whole different position than you had them initially when you met them. And you're going to be this kid's best friend, and you are going to find that, well, I shouldn't say how you're going to, I found that I just felt for all of these kids because they have good hearts. They just have difficult symptoms. I want you to also consider development. All of you have studied development and human development. We know where the average 7 and 8 and 9-year-old is supposed to be, where the average teen is supposed to be. But consider development of a child that has a mood disorder. You have to think about where they are in their cognitive skills. Are you able to take in all the information that your neurotypical peer would take in if you are persistently and chronically dealing with an overload in your limbic system? Socially, are you able to learn the same skills if you, again, are dealing with some kind of emotional turmoil? If your experiences from 2 years old on might be that you're not quite fitting in. So then you're not getting the same social skills. And emotionally, we already know something is wrong with my emotional center. So I'm not developing the same way emotionally. So to assume that my 9-year-old client is 9, based on Erickson, based on Piaget, and based on Kohlberg's moral development would be incorrect. You need to get to know the child and find out where they're functioning so that you can bring your treatment, your terminology, your actions down to meet their needs. Cognitively, where are their development? We said that there's some neurocognitive deficits in that front lobe of the brain, the executive functioning. So they don't do as well with sustained memory. That's why they can't remember what they learned last week or yesterday, or the fact that you told them this before. You've told them it over and over and over again, but they don't necessarily remember it. They have a huge problem with working memory. Working memory is when I take in information and I have to do something with it up here, and then I spit it back out. So I have to process it in some way, and I have to decode it, or I have to, in some way, make something fit together. On our WISC, the Wechsler child, we'll see that these kids score exceptionally low in the decoding. So where they have to look at a symbol, and they have to look at a sheet, and they have to say what that symbol means based on the sheet, they get 2s and 3s on that subscale. They really score very poorly because their brain can't go back and forth like that, not quickly. So they're not processing at the same speed. Their verbal memory, what they hear, oftentimes isn't what they remember. So they get things messed up, and that can cause a problem when you say, don't be late, and they said, be late, okay. Don't do this, and they do it anyway. I told you not to. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. So little things like that, their verbal memory for information that comes in sections, do this, do this, do this, step 1, step 2, step 3. They lose you after step 2. They're gone. They got 1 and 2. They're gone for 3 and over. So you've just given them a lot of information that they can't do anything with. Their ability to organize their information, to prioritize their information, to be able to problem solve. You know, every day, how much problem solving do you think we actually do in a day? Let's see. I get up in the morning, and that's my first problem I have to solve is what am I going to wear? Then what am I going to eat? Then I have to problem solve how I'm going to act. See, these are things we take for granted, and our brain just does them. It just knows this is what I have to do, and it just kind of goes like that. Their brain isn't doing that. Their brain is on overload. They wake up, and they're already overloaded because they have to problem solve, and their executive functions aren't working the same way. So their decision about what to wear, what to eat, and how they're going to get on the bus in the morning are 3 major problem-solving decisions that the rest of us take for granted that already have them snowed under for the day. Just things to consider that you're working with. The social development, that their reading of social cues is off, much like an ADHD child, but their reading of social cues will be skew towards the negative aggressive. Example, those are cool. Is that Batman on your sneakers? You making fun of my sneakers? He made fun of my sneakers. He doesn't like my Batman. Is that what he said? No. That's not what he said. He asked about sneakers. He asked about the picture on them. He actually thought they were cool. But that's not the way this child read it. Partially, this child didn't read it that way because in his brain, or her brain, is a negative lens. It's like looking at everything through, if I have on blue lenses, everything looks blue. If I have that negativity that we talked about several slides ago, that underlying depressive, aggressive negativity that is just inherent in this disorder, everything's got that lens. So I'm just assuming that's exactly what you were saying to me, that you were teasing me and making fun of my sneakers. That you don't want to sit next to me, that you're going to steal my pencil, that you're going to do something to me. I'm automatically coming in with that assumption, as wrong as it might be, with that assumption. And when I have that assumption, I will make it my reality. I cannot read your social cues. And on top of that, I'm very emotional. I'm one of these people that's up and down, and so I am literally creating a wave, a wake. You know, it's like skiing. You're just creating that wake. I'm just leaving people on both sides of me. When family, when friends, when peers, when they all feel pushed away because I've left this wake, they're not coming near me. Peers, we're talking about 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they're not going to enter into a situation where they don't feel comfortable. They're going to go, I'm staying away from her. Oh, no way am I going next to him. That's trouble. And after a while, parents go, I'm exhausted. I need a break. You take them. I need a girls' night out. So we feel that tension, and that's what these kids are feeling too. Now, what happens? How do we learn social skills? How do we learn social skills? We learn social skills by being in appropriate social situations. If every situation I go into, I create an inappropriate situation, I have no way of learning how to be appropriate. I myself create the inappropriate, and now every place I go, I have this same situation cropping up. I'm only learning and reinforcing my own negative behaviors. The fact is, I really need warmth. I'm a child. I need warmth. I need my mom and my dad to love me. I need someone to understand me. I need to accept myself and to quit hating myself. That's how I became a statistic on slide 2 or 3. Okay. I need these things, but I have no ability to give them. Not yet, at least. I don't have it. I don't know how to give you warmth. I don't know how to understand you because I can't even understand me. And I'm too young to even actually know that probably anyway. But I'm even further behind than my peers. I am really not a very fun person to be around, but I need you. I need you to understand me so I can grow. Therein lies the problem. Who's going to give first? They react by acting out. They react with their low self-image, their negative sense of self, their poor social skills. They're going to fight, they're going to argue, they're going to withdraw, they're going to isolate, they're going to disrupt every room that they enter, and they're going to seek attention. This is by this time when this child is being hauled in by the arm and the ear into your office, and the parent says, fix them. Fix them. You've had your internship. Where's the magic wand? Fix my child. They're broken. There's something wrong with them. Fix them. I put them on medication and they're sleeping, but they're not fixed. There's still a problem. They don't act right. I've spanked them. I've timed them out. I've taken everything out of their room. They've been suspended from school several times and they still don't act right. There's something wrong with my kid. emotionally, there is something wrong. They're struggling. They're struggling to really understand this depression, and they're struggling to be able to separate that emotion from the logic. They're struggling to react correctly to their states of mind. See, at 1 minute they're down here, the next minute they're up here, and it switches. And even while I'm down here, I'm up here and kind of in between. So I just kind of am reacting to everything on these different levels of energy. So before you start entering in to working with the child, consider this whole picture. Consider where they are developmentally. Consider what they're all struggling with. Consider how you're going to put that treatment plan together. What's that treatment plan going to look like? Who are you treating and what are you treating? You're not just treating a behavior. You're not just treating one isolated incident. You're treating a whole child with a whole realm of issues, and you're treating them not at their chronological age, but you're treating them at the developmental age, which is going to be scattered all over. You have to think about this whole picture before you start your treatment plan and decide, what am I going to do next? Consider what they're missing. They're missing problem solving. So if you're going to say, hey, let's stop and think and consider. Oh, that's going to work, right? Before you act out, Johnny, and get into trouble, I want you to stop and think about it. We're going to do that little stop sign in the brain. We're going to just make stop and think about what your actions are going to cause. Think about the consequence. That's going to work. I'm going to teach them that this week. I love the smiles I'm getting out there because you all know that's not going to work, right? We have some problem-solving issues, and so they're not stopping and thinking, and as a matter of fact, that's going to set them up for failure. They're missing friends, and they're missing social skills, they're missing any sense of connection, and they're missing any academic success. So they're coming into your office right now, and they're thinking another failure, right? Another person to think I'm a bad child. What do they need? They need warmth. Why do I have maternal warmth? Because Barbara Geller, back in 1998, was doing a study, and there was something that came from this study that she wasn't expecting. She reran it in 2002, actually looking for this piece, and it was confirmed. Here's what happened. I feel like I'm standing on top of you, I'm sorry. Here's what happened. Barbara Geller was working with bipolar children, and she was looking at what medication works the best for their symptom relief and to keep them out of the hospital. When she was doing that, she was also doing a demographic sheet on them. And she asked lots of questions about their family and their history, and she took a lot of information about who did what in the family and what their connections were. And here's what she found, that the medication didn't make much difference. They all worked at about the same level. But one thing stood out to be 4 times more powerful than anything else to keep those kids out of the hospital. And it was maternal warmth. Mommy to love. Now, I happen to be a mommy of a bipolar child. That's not as easy as it sounds. Maternal warmth and mommy's love when a kid is biting and kicking and hitting you is not an easy thing. Because there's a natural part of you that wants to go, oh, how did I get you? Why did I have a monster? But if you can set boundaries, have good self-care, and be able to see this child and go inside and see a different set of circumstances, and still be able to give some kind of love and acceptance, these kids did better. Not just a little bit better, they did 4 times better. So maternal warmth made the top of my list. But they also need a different approach to learning, because you coming in, or them coming to you, and you teaching them for 50-minute hour your new social skill, and to think and consider before they act, and to play a game, isn't necessarily going to teach them anything. And your hour is just another hour where they didn't learn anything, and they feel like they failed. They need a new sense of self-image. They need to know, who am I? Not a bad child. Who am I really? And they need to be able to respect themselves. Because can you respect others if you don't respect yourself? No, you cannot. And as they're entering into these teen years, that's hard enough if you don't have a mood disorder. If you have a mood disorder, it's darn near impossible. That first step has to be to help the child to reduce the sense of shame and blame and guilt that they hold inside. They need to find some kind of hope for the future. And they need to be able to identify themselves as a person and not a behavior. I am not what I do. I am Johnny. I am Susie. I got an issue. And I know I haven't done right. They have to take responsibility. I'm not clearing them from the responsibility. Do not hear that piece, okay? Do not assume I'm clearing them from all responsibility. But they are not their behavior. They are a child that has a disorder, and their disorder and the symptoms of their disorder causes them to act out in ways that are unacceptable. And because they have cognitive deficits, because they have social skills deficits, because they have mood and energy and emotional deficits, the way that we're trying to teach them to fit in and act socially acceptable doesn't work. We have to first start with building a foundation that they don't have. It's been cut down every time they've gone into a social situation, and probably every day at home as well, because that's another social situation. It's been cut down. We have to build up some sort of foundation. And that foundational piece has to eliminate and work to get rid of the shame. See, shame is usually linked to blaming. If I feel bad, I'm going to blame you so I don't have to feel so bad. So that's why it's never my fault, it's your fault. You know that, right? It's your fault. It's not mine. It's typically blame is attributed to bad parenting. It's the parent's problem. Bad mothering, bad fathering, split family, socioeconomic problems, lived with so-and-so, has a bad neighborhood, bad school, bad teacher, something outside of the child themselves. If the family feels blame and shame, even if the child is too young to be using those words themselves or figuring it out, they feel it. They feel that sense of it. And that's how we get stigma. And what we know is that when you put shame and blame together, you get a stigma about a disorder, a disease, a symptom. And when you get stigma, you get people who don't want to even say that they have any of these things. And if they can't say, I have a problem with my mood, I have a problem with how I take in information, I have a problem with how I understand the way to deal with society, then how am I going to get help? Because I'm not going to talk to you because you're talking about that thing that I don't want to talk about. Can't talk to you. I can't take your medication because that's going to have something, that's going to have a negative effect on my image. So I want to tell you a few stories about people who dealt with the stigma. Jacob is my son. When he was 11 years old, he's now 19, by the way. When he was 11 years old, I was going to be doing a speech for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We were going to the national convention. NAMI was something that helped me as a parent more than probably anything in the world because I got to deal with other parents, right? So I'm on my computer. I have NAMI on top of, I don't know, I was putting together a PowerPoint presentation or something. And Jacob comes in and he says, what's that? NAMI. What's NAMI? National Alliance on Mental Illness. That's a dumb name. What's a dumb name? Mental illness. Immediately I'm thinking, oh, he's got the stigma, right? I said, well, honey, it's not, it's dumb because I'm not ill. Well, I'm going to be the good little clinician mom, right? Well, he goes, I'm ill when I have strep throat and I go to the doctor and they give me medicine and I'm all better. I go to the doctor, I take medicine, I'm not all better. Okay, now I'm between the heartbreaking part and the feeling sorry for him, but instead I say to him, so what should we call it? I don't know. And he leaves. I'm kind of thinking, phew, we're done with that conversation, but not. Because 2 hours later, he comes back. I'm in a whole different room. He comes back. He goes, Namu. I'm like, what? Namu. Namu. Call it Namu. What's NAMU? National Alliance on Mental Uniqueness. I'm not ill, I'm unique. Remember, Mom, I'm ill when I have strep throat. I'm not ill because it doesn't get better. I'm unique. I think different. He's 11. Can't problem solve to save a soul in a classroom. Can't get along in a classroom. Has been self-contained most of his school life. But could come up with that. He came to the National Convention. That was one place he did feel comfortable. He came to the National Convention even as a kid. And there was a booth where you got your different stickers and there's pins and all this kind of stuff. And I said, Jacob had an idea. This is my son Jacob. He had an idea. He goes, Namu, doesn't wait for, and he had no social skills, right? Namu. And he goes through this whole thing. They made him a button that's this big that said Stigma Buster. They're like, that is the greatest example of a child that doesn't have stigma. I'm mentally unique. Eric's story doesn't have a happy ending necessarily. Eric's story is about a little boy who's 9, and he is in the self-contained classroom, and he was under the table more days than not. I had a host. I always wore long sleeves and long pants to work, by the way. Self-protection. I had a host of scratch marks and little nibble marks and all these kinds of things just from being under the table to try to encourage Eric to join his friends, and that term being used very loosely, peers would be the better use of that term, to get him to come on out. Finally, after 2 months of this, every day Eric was in trouble, but Eric didn't start out that way. He didn't start out that way. He was in self-contained for a long time. He had an emotional disability. He was considered mood disorder, not otherwise specified, and he had been on Risperdal, and it had worked. So when we finally called Mom back in and said, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What changed so dramatically that we can't get him back to where he was? She said, well, I don't know. She goes, it could be the Risperdal. Do you think it's worn off? No, I took him off of it. Is he taking anything right now? No. Okay. Did the doctor find that there was a problem with it? No. Does the doctor know he's off? No. Was there an insurance issue? No. Was there a cost issue? No. So it begs to ask the question, what's the issue? We have Eric, who is doing well on Risperdal, who is making progress. We now have Eric who doesn't take Risperdal, and he's in trouble daily. Why no more Risperdal? Well, I'm getting married. And my husband's family, my future husband's family, looked up Risperdal, and it's considered an antipsychotic and a mood stabilizer for children with severe problems. My future husband and his family just didn't think that it was really a problem. They just thought it was probably my parenting, and that because Eric didn't have a dad for so many years, a good, solid role model, now that my husband's coming into the picture, he'll be able to straighten him out. He doesn't have a mental illness. We're going to try and get him out of this classroom. Well, you're going to get him out of this classroom. You're going to get him out of the whole school if he doesn't start behaving. That's not the issue. The issue is he does have a disorder. You have a host of tests to prove that. You have years of medical evaluations and psychiatric evaluations to prove that. It was the stigma. She could not face up to the stigma. And the sad part is we challenged that. We needed to challenge that and talk to her about that, and she removed Eric from the school district because he didn't need that. He just needed a firmer, better, different way of discipline. Judith Letterman was one of the speakers at one of the national conventions for NAMI. She wrote a book called The Ups and Downs of Bipolar Child. From New York, a writer, but also the mother of a bipolar child. You know, when you go to a convention and you're sitting in a room like this, you don't know who's in the audience, and you're trying to look like you don't have any emotional interest. You're just going for information, right? Kind of maybe that professional look, just going for the information. So she asks out there, she says, okay, you know, everybody's here to learn about bipolar children. Yes. She goes, how many of you have a home that's decorated bipolar style? Silence. What's going on? She goes, decorated bipolar style. She says, I'm assuming that if you're here, you're either a professional working with families, or that you might be a professional and a parent. She goes, like I am, or maybe you're just a parent. And I just was wondering if your decorator is a bipolar child. Let me tell you what decoration bipolar style means. It means holes in the door, holes in the walls, cracks in the windows, broken doorways. And everybody just gets this, because what were we feeling? A sense of relief. Yes, my house has been decorated bipolar style. Absolutely. And so had a whole bunch of other people in that room. The stigma of having something hidden behind closed doors that you don't want people to see had now been released. I didn't have to feel bad anymore. There was a name for it, and there was a style. It doesn't make Better Homes and Gardens, by the way. But I tell you that us moms, we're really good at Home Depot patchwork. We got it. So we started talking about this, and this whole group of people who were sitting there like this for the first 5-10 minutes suddenly start interacting, and literally, I kid you not, she spoke for 75 minutes on her book. It was very interactive. We got together afterwards, and at 5:30 that night formed our own little support group. We had 24 people in the lobby all talking about our bipolar kid experiences as parents and professionals. The best way to get rid of stigma and to find help. We found hope, and so do these kids. When you start with instilling the hope, you will help them find the hope. And that is central to the whole process of change. They can't change their thoughts, they can't change their feelings unless they have some kind of hope. Because if they're hopeless, they're not going to exert any effort. Do you exert effort if you're hopeless? Who here is going for a degree right now? If you feel like getting your degree is hopeless, are you going to go to class? Are you going to bother to come? Thank you very much. So why would you even engage in life if you think it's hopeless? You don't. You become a statistic. So hope is one of your core anchors. Kimberly was one of my students. She was not in the self-contained. I'm not sure why. She needed to be there, but she wasn't there. Kimberly's mom was also depressed, and we know that depression and mood disorders also is genetic and has a lot of genetic tendencies. We see a lot of it in the same families. And Kimberly was depressed as well, but hers came out in a different way. She looked kind of oppositional, defiant. She looked like somebody who was just trying to make life difficult. And she said, as she talked to me, because I was a counselor, I was a safe person, she said there's really, nothing that she could do different in her life, that life would never be better. Life was never going to be better. And the reason? Because her mom told her that. Her mom told her that life was never going to get any better. And the reason that it wasn't going to get any better, well, there was lots of reasons, but one of them was because of her behavior. She was a bad kid. Mom was already depressed. Child was already had a mood disorder, and so life wasn't going to get any better. So since it wasn't going to get any better, I might as well just act however I want to every day. And what she was learning was that the more that she cleared off her desk, the more they called me, the more she had one-on-one attention. So we were reinforcing negative behavior with a positive reward. Well, I decided to quit working with Kim because I was the positive reward. And I needed to work with Kim's mom a little bit. So I had Kim's mom come in, and we talked about hope. We talked about how to change life. We talked about how to do some very simple things for your own self-worth and self-esteem. And it was through that work that it was the first step. Because without Mom being hopeful, I couldn't work with Kim to have Kim hopeful. And so that was the first step. It was a baby step. And I did go back to working with Kim, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes the very first step of working with kids to help build that sense of hope. Cody is another one. He had the why bother attitude. Why should I bother with anything? Because nothing is going to be different anyway. I live with my grandparents. My parents have disowned me. He's 8. Parents don't disown an 8-year-old. In his mind, they had disowned him because he went to live with them. Again, that family splitting. I'm living with them. My brothers and sisters are living with Mom and Dad in a different house. I'm living over here. I'm separated from my family. So there was no bother. There was no reason, nothing that he could see he could do to change the situation. And the message he's getting from his grandparents, you got to stay here. You can't be involved with anything because why? You are hopeless. You're hopeless. Why are you hopeless? Because you're a bad kid. You just can't make a good decision to save your soul. You're never going to amount to anything. And Mark was another one. But Mark was a little bit different. Mark was diagnosed with a severe mood disorder, and Mark did not want to ever come to school. He was totally hopeless. As a matter of fact, he would get off the bus and go the other direction instead of into school. He had some very severe problems with being okay going into the classroom. And they kept bringing him in to see me. And we were working with depression and anxiety until one day I had him do something. Mark was 9, okay? And I had him do something, and I said, can you put down the word whether you're sad or mad? And I realized he couldn't spell sad or mad. The cognitive disorders for him was actually the primary problem. It's because of his cognitive problems stemmed out to a mood disorder. We got Mark tested and found out that he actually had an IQ of 64. He was so severe in his learning disabilities. I really don't know how he learned as much as he did, but he was so severe in these learning disabilities that he didn't understand anything. He felt hopeless because they kept passing him on, because he was a big kid, you know, and that age. They kept passing him on, but the problem was he just was falling further and further behind. Therefore, his mood getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Positive reinforcement happening. Why? Because he got sent home and suspended for mood, or sent over to my office because of acting out. And actually, when we got him into a self-contained learning disabled classroom, Mark lost all of his mood disorder within a year with no treatment other than, hey, I actually can learn to read. So hope comes in all different forms. So that if we're going to instill some sense of hope, some foundation, we have to have these children understand that I'm a person and have some kind of self-identity. Poor self-identity is affiliated or associated with aggressive behavior, with anger, with disruption. And children's identity comes from how they see themselves in the mirror. It's that looking glass self. You've heard of that, right? I am who people think I am. So one of the activities is to build a new positive image. And how do I go about building a positive image? Well, I needed to find a new way for them to describe themselves. Now, a lot of you being students, you know that in your textbooks, you get theories, and sometimes your textbooks will give you some direction as far as interventions. Everything that you're hearing here today, as far as my interventions, is my creation, for the most part, of me laying down and going, what's going to work? That's where you have the art versus the science of counseling. It's when you understand the theory and what needs to change that you're able to take that and come up with, well, then how do I intervene at a level that's going to work with this child or this family? And if I understand that what I need to have is a new way, a new foundation, a new way for that child to describe themselves, and I have to come up with something creative to do. And what I've done is I created the name game. We've all played the name game, right? Find positive things to describe yourself. So I have them put their name down the side of a sheet of paper. And they can, of course, decorate this however they want. And I have them put something that they like, just something that they like, or a positive about themselves for each letter. Now, these kids need a lot of help. Don't be afraid to help them. That's fine. I even took, like, these softballs, like you get for little kids, and I just have different words on them. So I could toss them a ball, and they could look around on the ball to find different words that might describe themselves. They can have other people help them. They can, because actually, that's even better if your friend or your peer can tell you something that's good about yourself. If a parent or a sibling can tell you. If you have to help them, that's fine. So this would look like this. This is, my name is Sheila. So I'm going to say silly. I'm going to say happy. I'm going to say the E for me is energy. Now keep in mind, kids come up with things that are probably less like this and more concrete, and that's okay. That's fine. I like ice cream. It's one of my favorite foods. L is I do like to laugh when the stress of the day is gone. And A, I like airplanes. I don't like airports, but I like airplanes. This took me 2 seconds for me. This is going to take your child about 20 minutes to complete one of these, depending on their name. Hopefully they're not going to have a name that has a lot of Y's and Q's and Z's in it, but you know, you work with whatever you have. You then take this and you make a story from it. In the group form, I'd say, I wouldn't even ask for volunteer. I'd just say, okay, let me see yours. And I take you and I have you stand up next to me, and you're going to be all nervous because you're the first one, right? And I'm going to say, group, I'd like you to meet Sheila. Sheila is silly, and she's happy, and she likes to laugh. She's got a lot of energy. Her favorite food is ice cream, and she likes airplanes. Group, please welcome Sheila. And everybody claps, right? What do you think happens after that? First of all, what's that?
They all raise their hand.
I want to be next. I want to be next. I want to be next. Okay, I want to be next. And for every child, you go ahead and you can do the story. But it's important to do in the story, not just the words, but the whole story. Add as much as you possibly can to this story. If they want to be part of it, that's great. Get them involved. I've had kids come up, can we do our last names now? So the idea is, why did I pick a name? Well, at school, how often do we do names at school? How often do we write our name? Oh, about 5-6 times a day. For every worksheet that you have, for every test that you have, your name goes on. If I can have this as what my name means, I now have something, a visual that I keep writing over and over and over. Better than a positive affirmation that adults do, right? I'm writing this over and over and over. And now if I've got this affiliated, because I've done this myself, I, the child, have come up with these things and I've put it there. The teacher or leader has read it. The whole class has applauded. At the end, I read them all again, reminding them who they are. They've developed it into a poster, so we either have it in the room or I send it home with them to put it on their bedroom door. What am I doing? I'm giving them a new sense, a new self-identity based on their name, something that they see multiple times a day. That's the name game. So what happens? These kids begin to remember who they are in a different way. This is all I do on the first session, just that. I don't talk about anything else. I just want to get to know them from this positive. I have to laugh because some kids come up with things that you and I might think is negative. They don't. Oh, I'm odd. Is that a good thing? Yeah, I like being odd. Okay, that works. Energetic. Energetic can be, well, yeah, I have a lot of energy, and the teacher doesn't always appreciate it, but hey, I like my energy, right? So different ways that they think. I've got to tell you about Micah. Micah was 10. He had a severe mood disorder, not diagnosed as pediatric bipolar disorder, but on Risperdal, on Depakote, on clonidine at night. The child was heavily medicated for the age that he was, and used to have a lot of suicidal tendencies. Comes from a family where mom is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. 3 brothers, all of them like 9, 10, 11 years old, they're right in a row. All of them have mood disorders. So it's nurture, it's nature, it's the whole combination going on. But Micah happened to be in the class that I was doing my study in. So he was getting the full benefit of a very structured 8-session program where we were working on things in order. He got to take home his poster and put it up on his wall. The parents always had where they could contact me if they actually needed to, even though I was just going into the school. And she contacted me one day, and so, you know, I ended up going over there. She was part of the behavioral health system, and I was working in the behavioral health system, so it was actually probably a good thing. So I went over to the house, and Micah is all over the place, and he's threatening to harm himself, and he just has behaviors. And I looked at him, and he was just wild. And I said, Micah, right here, look at me, Micah. Who are you? I'm out of control. I love that when a 10-year-old tells me that they're out of control. It's like, that is so not their words. Really? But who are you? And he was looking at me like, what are you asking me? And I said, what does your name stand for? Micah. Oh. I said, you got a poster up in your room. Go look at it. What does it stand for? And I honestly today cannot remember what the M, I, C, and A all stood for. But he went up, came down, repeated to me, oh, that's right. It stands for, you know, whatever the 4 good things were. I said, so that's who you are. So what is this out of control stuff? This is a 15-minute intervention after, yeah, we worked on these things probably a good hour that day or a couple days before. And all it took was redirecting him to who are you? Foundationally, who are you? You're not an out-of-control kid. So once we get that, then what's going on? Okay, so Micah is this. Now I know who you are again. Now let's sit and talk about what's going on in your head, what's going on, why you're having this behavior, why you're having these symptoms. And I like to call them symptoms. Why are you having this? That was a great redirect. I remember Cody was another little boy. Same Cody that you saw before. Cody was another little boy. He saw me in the store one day. He comes up, he goes, hi, Dr. Sheila. I said, hi, Cody. Do you remember me? I'm cute. That was the C. I'm odd. That was the O. I love dogs and yo-yos. I said, I do remember you, Cody. His mom says, cute, odd dogs and yo-yos. There's no more Cody. There's cute, odd dogs and yo-yos. But that was the way that now they can identify with themselves. That's building that new positive image. The next piece is then having to go from the positive image, I'll close this so that we have a blue background instead, to now we have to talk about the difficult stuff, right? What makes life so darn difficult? And we have to be honest. We can't sugarcoat things here. There's no sugarcoating. But we also don't have to use words that accentuate the negative, like weak, needs improvement, things like that. Let's just talk about what makes you different. Let's talk about the focus being on the problem. What's the problem? And one of the ways that I like to do this was, these are spec studies. These are actual images that come from a brain. I got these from NAMI, from their national convention one year, through the National Institute of Mental Health. They had a whole brochure. I picked them off. I copied them. Hopefully I'm not copyright illegal here. So I changed for the kids, I said moody and sad. All they have to, you don't need to be a neuroscience major for this, by the way. This is what's different about the pictures. Now, all of them see themselves as being moody or sad, so they all get that much. That's why they're in a self-contained classroom, right? What do you notice different about the pictures? What do you guys see? Think like a 10-year-old. What do you see different?
They look different.
They look different. What's different?
The left has the most blue.
What's that?
The left has the most blue.
The left has the most blue. This one? This one has the most blue. Okay, so the normal brain has a lot of blue. What else do you know? What do you notice about the moody one?
Has a lot more spaghetti.
Has a lot more what? Spaghetti? Red. Who said red? Red. So here's one of my first kids. That one has red hots. That one's got a lot of red hots. It's perfect. I loved it. I got to use that. I got a lot of mileage from red hots, right? Listen to what your kids have to say because they come up with great things that they understand. I'm like, it does have red hots. You're right. So what do you do when your brain has red hots? Now, do I really expect that these kids know? I don't, but you know what? They surprised me. They did know. I hit my sister. I rip up things in my room. I kick my mom. I do this, I do that. So when you have red hots in your brain and it goes moody on you, you do something like hit your sister, punch your brother, rip up your homework, kick your dog. Ooh. So your brain gets red hots, and that's what you do. Okay, do you see where we're going with this? What's the difference between I do this or my brain gets red hots and then I do this? This is the cause. Red hots are the cause. My brain gets red hots. I'm telling you right now, I don't know how your brain got red hots. I can't control the fact that your brain has red hots. That might be something that we can control through medication, but yes, you are moody, your brain has red hots, you act out. Okay, I've now been able to separate. I'm a good child. I am cute, odd, I love dogs and yo-yos, right? And I have a brain that has red hots. And when my brain gets red hots, I do these things. We have a progression of how I'm understanding what's going on in my life. Well, let's take a look at some of the ways that we can express our emotions. This is the next thing. Kids love to play with Play-Doh. By the way, Play-Doh makes a disastrous mess on the floor. Model Magic dries better, cracks less, makes less of a mess, a little more expensive, probably worth it in the long run, especially if you have a private practice or an agency that you don't want to have a totally room floor. Just saying. So mood monsters are a way of further separating the problem of what you're feeling, and you're putting it into a form. A form, because as a monster, you know what we can do to monsters? We can tame monsters. Animals, monsters, things can be tamed. So now I'm taking myself from being the problem to being someone that has symptoms that are problematic, and now I'm ready to start listening to you, my therapist, because you're going to help me learn how to tame the mood monster. And mood monsters can be made in session. Mood monsters can be made at the beginning of group. They can be made during group. Mood monsters are a visual way of explaining how I feel. Do I really know what those are? Heck no. Do I need to? No, but I know that this one was not feeling particularly good. He had some kind of fishy thing, has his mouth wide open. It looked kind of like it's going to attack. This one was sad. Just a plain old I'm sad, I'm type of thing. So if we can see a physical representation, we can help them put with that a word to describe it. Because doesn't language get in our way, especially if we're a child that has some cognitive problems with slowness as well? Our vocabulary isn't very expansive. I know mad, I might know sad, and I know happy, maybe scared. I've got this basic 4, but can I really express what I'm actually feeling? Sometimes we can put added words to that. And the mood monsters, plus it's a physical, tangible way of being able to express how I'm feeling. So those mood monsters help to discover what the emotions are, because now I'm the adult, I'm the therapist, I'm the one with the master's degree, remember? I'm the one who can add some words to what you are showing me. And I can give you some ideas for some words. I can help you put a picture or an object to that feeling, and I can begin to see, in my understanding, what does that feeling mean to you? So if mad means, okay, that's different than if mad means, there's different feelings that go with that. And I can help you better to talk about those feelings or to manage those if I understand them better. I also can share that language with those people around you, your teachers, your caregivers, your parents, maybe even your older siblings if you have older siblings. Another thing I would do is teach children how to use a mood chart. You can find mood charts online, you can buy them, you can make them. Make them simple, just with faces. Do something, maybe the child can help you put it together. Have them start marking down their mood so that they understand what's going on. If they can identify it for you by circling a number, circling a face in the morning, one at noon, one in the afternoon, one at night, one before they come to see you, one after they come to see you, they get used to it. How many of you, I don't know, within here, if you use the Scott Miller outcome rating scale? No? Do you know what it is? Okay, it has faces on it. For kids, that's the perfect mood chart. That'll work. So being able to become aware of the moods and how to use it is a great way for you to get the child more involved in their own therapy. You can also then begin to expand their emotional vocabulary. So if you do faces, now you can start putting words under those faces, right? You can give them new words to use. They love to learn new things, especially if they are commended for it, they get a star for it, a sticker for it, they have a new word that they get to use that their friends don't know. Another thing that you can do are games. The games for the kids, I love to use a picture dictionary where I would just go to clip art and get different pictures of different faces and let them come up with words. And they could make their own little cards with that. There's also a website, do2, the number 2, learn, learn.com, that has ones that are already done for you. It's actually a website for kids with developmental disabilities. In case you have any of those, it's just an awesome website. But they do have that. Do, the number 2, learn, learn.com. So emotional charades, lots of fun to play in a group setting where now you're giving them different words and they can act it out with a friend or with you. They usually feel more comfortable with you, so that's fine. You can have them act it out with you and everybody else can guess what their word is. And feelings bingo. How many of you have like feeling bingo games or anything like that? Do you have those? You can order those online as well. But this is how I do feelings bingo. I do it at the end of a session with a group. And the first time we're just using faces, right? I draw out the word and you have the face. The second time, I draw out a word, and before you can put your little marker there, you have to tell me an instance when you felt that way. The third time, I actually draw out instances, and if you have a word that would match the feeling that would go with that instance, you get to put your marker. So it kind of builds on the whole concept of I feel such and such when such and such happens. Why is that important? What did we talk about earlier that would make that important? Anybody?
Labeling the feelings as the moods are separate from themselves,
Externalizing the problem, labeling the feelings. Also, what is the mindset of kids with mood disorders? Aggressive, sad, angry. But what if I have something good that happens to me? Do I know the words for happy? Do I know the words for content? How about joyful? How about excited? Does excited always have to be manic? So we're trying to teach them this different range. And what is normal to feel if you get a good grade in a class? Excited, right. What is normal to feel when you're just at home, you're done with everything, or you're watching TV? Content. It's a normal feeling. So we're trying to kind of normalize and show them there's normal ranges of feelings, and there's ones that are out here. Those are the ones that they have to worry about. The ones in here, that's fine. That's great. Let's concentrate on some of those and be able to label those in our life too. Identifying triggers is now important if we're going to put that child back in control. Remember, that's one of our things, is to show them some control. If we're going to have them in control, don't they have to be able to identify some of the things that are triggering those moods? Now, we know they may just wake up in the morning and have the mood. There may not be a specific outside of their own head that has the mood. But we have to be able to identify that. And some of the activities that I've used to identify those, again, are the mood charts. And then as a group, what causes you to feel angry? Oh, you know what? Just ask the group. They've got a lot of things that cause them to feel angry. Mom said no. Teacher gave an assignment. Johnny took my pencil. Susie looked at me the wrong way. I don't like what's for lunch in the lunchroom. The lunchroom's too loud. Recess didn't last long enough, and the list goes on. Okay, if these are all triggers, great. Put them on the board. List them all down. It's a perfect way to start looking at what in their mind, not what in your mind, because it doesn't matter what is in your mind, what in their mind is causing them to react this negative way. Because if we don't know, we can't help them problem solve it. Because remember, they don't have the problem solving capabilities. We've got to step in, and we've got to be the front lobe of their brain for them. We have to be their executive function. We can't do that if we don't know what they're thinking. We're just going on our stuff, and our stuff is way too advanced for them. They've got the simple stuff. If they don't like what was on the lunch menu, that's good enough reason to feel upset. Doesn't work with our brain, but it certainly does with theirs. So that's the type of thing that we want to be able to brainstorm and find out what are those triggers. Another way is just letting them do some pictures, some mood monsters, and ask them to talk about those things. All of that will give you a wealth of information to work from as far as understanding now, how do I help them decide what they're going to do about it. One thing is telling them and teaching them about routines and the importance of routines. They have control over their routines. They can break their routine. They don't have to break their routines. Routines will help normalize everything and give them control. Routines for bedtime, routines for morning, routines for schoolwork, routines for after school. It really causes a lot of stabilization. And helping them make those routines so they understand sleep cycles, medication times, and meal times. These are concepts that are hard for them, but a routine is not hard. Here's what we do, and we do it every time. Why? Because it gives you control. You will be in control much better if you go to bed every night at 9 o'clock and wake up every morning at 7. If you eat this, and you eat at these times. If you eat when you feel hungry, because that can be a trigger for a lot of kids. These routines help them to stay in control. They can make up their own with their families. We want to talk to them about changing environments. What happens? We have to come up with routines and ways that we learn to change environments in a healthy way. These kids do not have flexible thinking. They cannot flex their thinking. Whenever things change, they fall apart. So it's their routines that change. Sometimes when you have a square peg and a round hole, and the peg just is not going to turn round, you've got to create a square hole. This is where you have to change sometimes how you act as therapists into more of the case manager, the advocate, the I need to talk to the teacher, I need to talk to the parent, and we need to come up with an environment that's also going to be conducive to a child that's square. Does that make sense? So going back to the triggers, I like to put triggers and ants together. Ants are automatic negative thoughts. That's coined term from Dr. Daniel Amen, who's big on the ADHD. He's a pretty popular author. He coined a term, automatic negative thoughts, as ants. And what are these? These are those thoughts that we have. Okay, this goes along with their triggers, right? Most of the time, those triggers that they are experiencing that are changing their mood are coming from some kind of thought that they're having about the fact that Susie just took my pencil, Johnny commented on my shoes, Mom said no, and they're having a thought about it. And this is what you need to have happen. You need to find out, what's the thought? What is the thought? And again, asking them, especially in a group format, what is the thought? Give them an example. You know, when my mom says no, I think she doesn't like me. You think that too? Because I know my mom likes my sister better. My dad, he hates me. He hates me, especially hates me when I bring homework home. My dad wishes I was never born. I hate school. My teacher hates me. You have this whole string of negative thoughts. So here's the activity. You make a nice big black ants out of construction paper with legs. You know how you can fold them so that they're kind of like springy and have them stick on it. Remember, kids, you got to keep their attention. You got to keep doing something. So they get this nice big ant. They understand that an ant is something that causes that mood to change. Because an ant is a thought. It's a bad thought. It's a black thought. And you have them write in their own handwriting, right on the back of it, what the thought is. Don't worry about spelling. This is one time we don't have to worry about if we spell it right, as long as you know what you're writing. And for really little kids, a picture is fine. But most of the time, you're going to be working with 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. They can write on the back of their ant. They can share what's on their ant. And then we have a ceremony. Ants go on the floor. And what do we do with the ants? We stomp the black ants. What are we doing besides getting rid of the negative thoughts by this action? We're using what? We're using our energy. We're using our body. We're using a different sense, right? And we're getting rid of something. This is a good way to get rid of negative energy. I've just thought it, and now what am I going to do with it? I'm getting rid of my black ant. Okay. In adult therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, all of you know this. I know you know this. What do we do when we have a negative thought? We do what? Dispute it. What else? Reframe it. Kids don't do that. Kids can't reframe a negative thought or dispute it very well. Because in a class of 7, if 2 kids don't like you, is that not most of the class? And do you care that the other 3 might like you? No. So you can spend a lot of time trying to do disputing and reframing with these kids, and it doesn't make much difference, because the fact is, I want my mom to like me, and right now my mom doesn't seem to like me. So no matter how much you dispute that, that's probably not going to get you as far as just getting off the topic. Let's find something that works better. So after we identified the ants and we stomped them out, I had to come up with something new. Here's where my imagination went again. I came up with pets, because they're kind of like ants. Positive emotional thoughts. Okay, it's a pet. Every child likes animals. Every animal, as we know in child speak has talents, they have personality, they've got something. So what's your favorite animal? Why is it your favorite animal? I like dogs because they're friendly. How are you like a dog? I'm friendly. I'm really energetic and I like to run around like a dog. Okay, can we make that into a statement? Make it into a positive affirmation and let them draw the dog. I'm like a fox. I like foxes. Why? They're slick. Are you slick? I am. Well, what does that look like? I can think really good. I can think really good like a fox. And we allow them, and I say pets, so that we don't get into things that we can't keep as pets. So we can't get into things like, the fox was a little out there. We don't have foxes as pets usually. We don't have elephants. We don't have things. We have fun things. We have cats that like to isolate, and they're kind of, they can be cuddly, but they don't have to be. We can have gerbils. We have hamsters. We can have snakes. Yeah, we can have scorpions. We can have a lot of different things as pets. The point is allowing them to come up with the positive, and do they have any of those positive qualities too? So what we're looking for is positive qualities. It's a way for them to build affirmations. And we put that into the affirmation. So now when I'm having this ant thought, I can switch it over to the pet thought. Ant to pet, ant to pet, ant to pet. And they get used to doing that. Kids are great at copying. Have you noticed that if you're working with kids? They're great at copying things that they really understand and they take to. They like animals. They like games. They like things that motivate them. They like to talk about themselves in a good way because nobody ever listens in a good way otherwise. The routines, do they like to do it? Not so much, but when you can put it in with the rest of this, so if I have control over what I do and I don't allow my brain to get the red hots because I have a routine that controls the red hots and I have choices over that, that gives them a little bit more structure and a little bit better control over themselves. So now we have to also teach them how to express those emotions and how to express them safely. Because they know how to express it loudly, violently, aggressively, none of which are acceptable. So how can I learn to express those emotions? Sometimes expression doesn't mean using my voice. It means also using my whole body. And sometimes it just is using every different sensory part of me. Perhaps I do that through art. I use my hands. I can be talking while I'm doing it. I can be making. I can be smashing. And I'm tactily grounding, DBT, right? I'm grounding by using my tactile abilities. Or perhaps I want to just paint a picture and express myself and use all kinds of gross colors. And maybe I want to use my fingers. Maybe I don't want to get them dirty. It really doesn't matter. Perhaps I want to listen to music. I want to dance. I want to run. I want to sing. All of it has one thing in common. What's that? It uses what? The body, activities, creativity. What's it doing? It's taking the focus off of these negative thoughts, these behaviors that I normally do, and I'm putting it onto what? A different way of using my sound, my voice, my tactile abilities, my creative abilities, my body. I'm using my energy in a different way. And here's the key. I'm not going to get in trouble for it. So these are the things that we usually take to the child right away and say, hit a punching bag. But if I don't like myself, I don't believe in myself, I don't know what's happening, all I'm going to have any of you ever seen the movie, what's the name of it? Can't think of it right now. It's about somebody from the mob, and he's with a therapist played by Billy Crystal. Analyze this. And he says, you know, sometimes when you're angry, you can hit a pillow, and he takes out a gun and he shoots up the pillow. That's about it. You know, our kids, they can't just hit a pillow and feel better if they don't have the rest of this to build on. That's going to help them maybe in the moment, and that's great in the moment. But what we're trying to do is create change, right? Create more of a long-term change. We want to teach them that typically there's an unhealthy expression that we use. We want to teach the caregivers, the parents, the siblings, everybody around them healthy ways of expressing emotions, because it's not just our children with the disorder that have unhealthy ways of expressing emotions. They're learning this also from other people around them. There's something called expressed emotions, and research on expressed emotion goes all the way back to actually working with schizophrenic families. Expressed emotions are the emotions that are expressed within a family environment. They're usually critical comments or even, okay? They're those hostile, you know, that hostile feeling. It's kind of an emotional over-involvement. It's tension. It's tension in the home. And the problem is that when we lack that maternal warmth, which I talked about with Geller, and that predicted our recovery and our length of recovery, if we have expressed emotion in the home, that's taking away from that warmth. That's taking away from what helps kids. So kids that have a lot of expressed emotions in their home tripled the rate of their major depression, of their substance abuse. This was without them having pediatric bipolar. This is just being in the house with some kind of a mood disorder that wasn't even specified or wasn't even off the charts. It was just being in a hostile environment. So now put that hostile environment on top of already a mood disorder, and it just skyrockets. So what do we have to do in order to get rid of some of that expressed emotion? Because we've been talking for the last 90 minutes about kids. Kids live in families, right? Kids live in families. And what do those families feel? They feel guilty. They feel powerless. They feel hopeless. They're angry. They feel shame. They feel blame. They feel all kinds of things. And what do they need? They need to understand that they didn't do something necessarily to cause a disorder. They need to feel that they have some power and that they can take some control, and that they are teaching their child, and that they can reinforce how their child can take some control. And they need to feel that they are going to understand what to expect, so that nobody's going home with false hopes. Nobody's leaving your sessions thinking you had the magic wand of Argosy University or ASU or U of P, and you spun it around and you fixed their child. That didn't happen, okay? That didn't happen. There's some expectations. There's things that are going to set off the child. Families need empathy. They need to know that others are in that situation, just like I talked about the NAMI convention. And once we knew that, we had a 5:30 group of 24 people. And all we were talking about is our own experiences, and it felt really good. We need to be heard without judgment, and that's where you guys come in. When you can sit and be Carl Rogers with mom and dad and caregivers that first session, and just be Carl. Okay. And you can be Carl Rogers all the way. You're listening without judgment, and they really need that. They need to know that somebody understands and cares. Parents need support, and that's where you can give them. Find your resources. NAMI is a great resource. There's online resources. There's, it used to be CABF online. It's now Balanced Minds, I think it's called. Website. They have online support groups. You know what? Finding a babysitter to go to a support group is tough. If you can find one online, it might be worth the time to do it after the child goes to bed. Sometimes they need some distance. They need some time away. They need to be given permission. Your case managers can help get respite for the kids. Regular babysitters don't work for these kids. That will last about an hour and a half. Okay, that doesn't work. They need to feel accepted, not just for themselves, but for their child. They need psychoeducation. Family therapy works very well. So you have times with the kid, but you also bring the whole family in, and you give everybody the chance to do name. You give everybody a chance to see, how do I express my emotions? You give everybody a chance to learn what it is that the child's learning. You teach them those coping skills. Those are all the things that you do anyway. Those are not new to you. It's the order in which you do it and the understanding by which you're taking on this project. You're seeing the whole child and the whole family, and you're seeing how it has to build. And that's the purpose of the program, was to see how it builds and does it in an order that works better than just going in and taking 4 sessions to try to change a behavior and then being unsuccessful. Okay, so I told you in the beginning this was research. So very quickly, did my research work? My study was, did an 8-session psychosocial treatment program work? Did it help their self-esteem? And did it lower some of the problematic behaviors, especially those that around social skills, around attention, around rule breaking, and around aggressiveness? And the quick answer, was it successful? Yes, based on a pre and post Achenbach with family, with teachers, and a Beck Youth Depression scale, or I'm sorry, Beck Youth Inventory. I was able to show that self-esteem did rise quite significantly after about 10 or 12 weeks. I was able to show self-esteem, take that back. Self-esteem defined as accepting and believing new ideas about themselves, lessening the underlying negative thoughts, building confidence, building some positive family and social interactions. I was able to show that social problems could be reduced. We could reduce them. Medication helped because it took away some of the anxiety so that they would engage more fully in their social environments. Social problems being defined as that they acted more positively with those around them. They felt more united. They accepted their peers more. They had a lot better focus on some of their academic needs as well. Medication helped. They did better with their attention problems. And we think that that was because we were giving them some very specific things to do, and especially things that helped them to focus on self-care and to put things in order and to do things as far as a routine and to do checklists. We were teaching them those skills. So I really think that's what was helping that. Was it helpful for reducing rule-breaking behavior? No, it didn't. It didn't. They had lots of still small rule-breaking behavior. I think that was because we didn't actually talk about specific rules. And I think you have to go in at that point and do one more layer of therapy and working with actual behavior modification for some of those things. Did it reduce aggressive behavior? Okay, I have to laugh at this one. With medication, yes. Without medication, it actually accelerated it. So why did it accelerate aggressive behavior slightly if it didn't have medication? Well, I was guessing that maybe it's because their social interactions were increased. So if your social interactions are increased and you have more better self-image, that you had more opportunity, but without the medication, you couldn't control the rage piece. Because we know that the rage piece, we really have to work with medication to reduce some of that impulsive rage piece. So we need further review. How do these programs help? What are the implications? The implications are that if we can devise some way of working with this really large group of kids and not just over-medicating them or trying to medicate them so that they behave, but actually teach them some skills, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce our cost of adult care later on. We're going to reduce the statistics of self-harm, of hospitalizations, We're going to reduce how many families fall apart. We're going to be teaching them how to manage. There's my information. You have, as far as I can tell, about 10 minutes for questions. Willing to answer just about anything that I can answer for you. So I went through that really fast. That's 6 hours condensed into 2.
You mentioned a little bit about how in the group you talked around the circle and did their names like that. We rarely have the opportunity to use groups, and so it would be more individual. Do you think it works better if it is a group? So maybe try to use their siblings or some other people or family? Or do you
It
think
worked
it's better
really,
alone?
really well. It works in any direction. It does work individually as well, but I really love the way it works in families, because the family is your social organization, right, in any child's. So if you have a chance to work with the family, even for part of a session, and have every member of the family doing this, and basically defining who they are in this different way, I found that it really worked, and it helped the parents. The parents were like, gosh, I haven't even thought of myself that way. So it was therapy for kind of everybody, but it helped the child just kind of fit right back into the family, and everybody was working together. So I started using it with almost every family, whether they have a mood disorder or not. That's just one of the ways of family bonding. Works beautifully. Other questions, thoughts? So you guys don't have a lot of groups that you get to have around here?
No. I was thinking about a group for the parent too, sorry.
That's good.
But, I mean, these parents, that they are so beat down, I
Right.
mean, we see it all the time.
Yep.
And the moms, they've just, when they come here, they're kind of at that point like,
Mhm.
please, I don't know what to do, and you got to do something. But I think if they had a group, I don't know if there's stuff right around this area where most of our clients live, where these parents could go and have that empathy and this
Right.
group thing going on. I think it would help a lot of our parents.
NAMI does have groups for parents.
I'm talking about like right here in Midtown Phoenix.
7th Street.
Yeah.
That's where the
7th
NAMI
Street, yeah.
office is, but I don't know where they're holding their groups right now. They change. But the other thing that we did, and I used to work for Impact, and what we did was, especially in the summer, we'd have a kids group, and then at the same time we'd have the parents group, and the parents group was run by parent support partners. Okay, so I was running the kids group doing this stuff, and I had 2 parent support partners that were running the parents group. Gave the parents a place to talk, gave the parents a place to gain support, and then I could teach my parent support partners some of the activities that I was doing so that they would understand what their child was doing, but also they could reenact some of that at home. So when we were, we had them all together to do the name game, of course, and then the parents would leave, and the parents could go talk. I would be working with the kids. When we were teaching about routines, the parent support partners are talking about routines, and they have that supportive environment where they can talk amongst how does it work for you, or how have you done it, and where's your biggest struggles. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I hope you learned something, and good luck with, if you are a student, good luck with your internship. If you're a clinician, good luck with your families.
Thank you.